All right, guys, it is that time of the month and your pants looks like a crime scene and you're moody. One of the biggest questions that I get is, what should you eat on your period? So today, we're gonna answer that question. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Further Food, for sponsoring this video. If you guys follow me in my Instagram stories, you know I have been taking their collagen, and we're actually gonna be talking about what I'm drinking here. It's something that I recommend you have on your period. Okay guys, let me take one more sip. Okay, so first, this is not to be taken as individualized medical advice. Obviously, I want you guys to talk to a doctor or dietitian one-on-one for your specific medical needs, but I just want to share some information that I've learned for you for educational and entertainment purposes only. So first, I think it's important that we start with kind of an overview of the menstrual cycle, because I'll be honest with you guys, before I started doing a lot of digging into this work, I was almost a little embarrassed about how little I felt I remembered about the menstrual cycle and how little I felt I knew about my own body. So let's go ahead and just do a quick refresher of what the menstrual cycle is and the different phases of it. So one thing to note is that throughout our menstrual cycle, our hormones change and they fluctuate. And with this, so does our appetite and our cravings and what our body needs. So let's talk about some of those fluctuations. And obviously remember too, there are so many different things that impact our hunger. So this is only just one piece of it. We're not talking about all the different things like your exercise or if you're fighting off an illness. I mean, there's so many different things, but let's just kind of dive into the menstrual cycle aspect of it. Okay, so first we have the follicular phase. So this is gonna be the first part, kind of the first half, like the first 2-ish weeks of your month in essence. And I say month roughly because we have this idea in our heads that it should be a 28-day cycle. And if you guys watch my previous video, you know I've been diving into a lot of women's health. And this book I highly recommend for tracking your cycle and finding out how long your cycle is and how long each of these phases are. Because everyone's body is different, and this idea that it's 28 days is not realistic for a lot of women. So just kind of take these overview timelines with a grain of salt. First, we have the follicular phase, and basically what happens here, this is like you're starting your period. So this is like, in essence, day 1. And with this, all of our hormones are tanked, like they're at their lowest, okay? So our estrogen is at its lowest at this point, and estrogen is tied to, it's an appetite suppressant, okay? So when our estrogen is low, our appetite's not gonna be suppressed. We're going to feel more hungry at that point. I feel hungry on my period. I don't know about you guys. So that's at the beginning of this phase. As this phase goes on, our hormones start to increase. So our estrogen starts to increase in those first, like I said, the first half, so those first 2-ish weeks. As you come off of your period, your estrogen is still rising. So I don't know about you again, but I definitely notice that when I come off of my period, I feel like my hunger kind of quote unquote levels out. I'm not as like ravenous. That's because part of it is because our estrogen is rising, and that kind of serves as an appetite, like I said, suppressant. Estrogen also increases insulin sensitivity, meaning that you can use carbs more readily and you can keep your blood sugars more stable. Testosterone is also another hormone that's rising in conjunction with estrogen. So like I said, that's kind of the first 2-ish weeks. They're at their lowest and then they're starting to rise. And if you think about it too, I mean, something that I think about is our bodies are doing a lot of building things, tearing things down, repairing things. That takes energy, okay? So when we have those feelings of I need more energy, I have this extra appetite, there's a reason, and it makes sense. So then right in the middle is the ovulation phase, and again, right in the middle, it's different for everyone, but basically this is when the egg is released. This is in essence the time that you can become pregnant, and estrogen and testosterone tend to be at their peak at this point. And when that egg is released, progesterone and luteinizing hormone, LH, which again I talked about in my previous video all on a healthy menstrual cycle diet. I can link to that up there if you guys haven't watched it, but those are starting to rise at this point. Our estrogen, again, that's the appetite suppressant. In the middle of our menstrual cycle, a lot of us feel like this is when we have a quote unquote normal appetite. We're not PMSing, we're not in our periods, and that's because our estrogen is at its highest and we're not having that kind of urge to eat. Well, it's a piece of it. Again, there are a million different reasons. Okay, so in the ovulation phase, if egg meets sperm, they become one happy family and create your family. And if it's not, then that's when we go into the luteal phase. So in the luteal phase, this is the second half, kind of the second 2-ish weeks of your cycle. Estrogen, remember it was at its peak, it's starting to decrease. So that appetite suppressant is starting to decrease. And at the same time, progesterone, which is kind of the opposite, it stimulates our appetite, is going to increase. At this time, your temperature is also rising. They talk about monitoring your temperature to kind of find out when you're finished ovulating in this book. I can link to the books in the description for you, but your temperature is rising at this point in the luteal phase and also your metabolic rate. So kind of think about it, we're preparing for PMS. We are preparing to go through that cycle again. Our appetites and our metabolic rate are increasing. There's a lot going on down there that's happening, right? It makes sense to have extra energy. Now, progesterone, remember that's rising, may also inhibit digestion. So you might feel, again, as we're approaching PMS, you might feel a little bit more bloated, or maybe there's a little bit of decreased motility in there, meaning things aren't moving along, if you know what I mean. Okay, so now we are coming towards the back half of the luteal phase. We're PMSing, and this is when, again, all of those hormones, they were coming back down. So now we are coming towards the back half of that luteal phase. We're getting towards that PMS. This is when all of our hormones are coming back down. Remember, we started with them all low. They're all headed back there. Now, serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, also falls. Hence, moodiness in our PMS. Now, a lot of times when we PMS, I definitely do have those increased carb and sugar cravings. Now, this is for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons might be because our body uses carb and sugar to create serotonin. And remember that serotonin's low, but also we feel pretty crappy with all of our hormones in the tank and just from being moody with PMS. So it's natural to want to have some of that pleasure. Humans want pleasure over pain. So we're going to look for that enjoyment, that satisfaction from food and those kind of more comforting, carby, sugary foods. And then there's also the fact that those foods tend to be more energy dense. So we need more energy at this point. Our estrogen's low, our metabolic rate is higher, need more energy. So we may be driven to eat those foods. There's so many different reasons for those cravings, but I hope that kind of just explains a little bit of kind of how our hormones and how the actual cycle itself can kind of impact our appetite and our drive to eat those foods. So like I said, then everything, boom, is in the tank, it's at its lowest, and then we go back to the follicular phase and we just keep rotating. I think this is fascinating, you guys. I mean, my husband was like, you're nuts for genuinely wanting to read a book that thick, but I think it's fascinating. So let me know in the comments if you like this topic and you want to hear more about it, because we are literally just scratching the surface right now. And like I said, I think it's fascinating. Now that we have a little bit of an overview of what the menstrual cycle is and how our hormones and our appetite change throughout it, let's get into what to eat on your period. Now, one important thing to note is that I want you to view these tips through a lens of gentle nutrition. So I don't want you to just eat these things because there's scientific evidence that show they may help our body on our periods. I want you to view this in a way of gentle nutrition. If you hate one of these foods that I'm gonna mention, don't force yourself to eat it. But if you are, making lunch and you're like, oh, that kind of sounds good, or I don't have a strong preference of what I eat, then maybe I'll incorporate one of those foods Colleen mentioned, see if I feel different. I always want you to not force yourself to do this, but you can view it in a lens of experimentation and say, maybe my next cycle, I'll include one of these foods and see if I notice a difference. That's what I want you to do with gentle nutrition, and to always, like I said, not force yourself to do things, but nutrition can be a part of our decision on the foods that we eat, but it shouldn't be the only decision maker, right? It's a balance, it's that gentle nutrition. Also, remember, as always, when we're going through this process, a lot of times nutrition does have to be put on the back burner. If you are new to intuitive eating and kind of learning to break those food rules, then you might need to just kind of hold this information and take it later while you allow your body to kind of navigate what makes it feel good and breaking those food rules. That's gonna come first. Let's get into it. So the first food that I want you to eat is literally just eat food. I want you to make sure that you're eating enough food. We talked about this a lot in my Healthy Menstrual Cycle Diet Plan video. So I'm gonna link to that again. I'll link to it in the description as well so you can watch that one. These videos really do go together, so I'd highly recommend watching both. The first one's more on kind of, okay, how do we get a healthy period? And this is more on, okay, we got that healthy period. Now, how do we eat for that? So you have to make sure that you're, like I said, getting enough food because this is important for a lot of reasons. Remember, our bodies are literally like building, tearing down, building, tearing down, and that takes energy to actually do. Okay, so it's not that it's just gonna happen out of thin air. And remember, when we restrict food and we undereat, we're going to develop a primal urge to overeat to kind of quote unquote make up for that. So it's important that you're not trying to restrict food in this phase and you're giving your body the energy it needs. A, so it can do the function that it needs, and B, so you can prevent that primal urge to eat the foods and kind of might turn into a binge. Okay, so the second thing that you can eat on your period is turmeric. That's where this bad boy comes in. So this is a turmeric latte that I made, and I'll show you how I make it. But basically, turmeric can be really great for us when we're on our periods. It can help not only during the PMS phase, but also on your period. So this one kind of goes for both of them. So curcumin is the main active ingredient in turmeric. This has been studied in women with PMS and has been found to improve moodiness symptoms like restlessness, irritability, anxiety, sadness, crying, and feelings of isolation. It's also been shown to treat some behavioral symptoms such as fatigue, lack of energy, insomnia, trouble with concentration, and appetite changes. It also may have an anti-inflammatory effect, which can kind of help with those muscle crampings. I get them really bad in my lower back, but it can kind of help with those. And this is due to the impact that turmeric has on our neurotransmitters and the anti-inflammatory system. Now, turmeric is a kind of funny one because you don't think of it like as a food like you would an apple, like you can just pick up from the grocery store. So one of my favorite ways to get this in is by using the, I'm gonna butcher this name because it's really long, so I'm just gonna read it. Superfood Turmeric Daily Golden Milk Powder Blend. Mouthful, but that's what I use. This is from Further Food, who is sponsoring today's video, and I love this stuff. Now, I love Further Food and use their products in my daily life, which is why I'm super excited that they're sponsoring today's video. So what I love about this golden milk powder blend is that A, I don't have to make golden milk from scratch because, I mean, I've looked into it and I just don't want to sit there over the stove and boil things and put my own spices in there. Like, I'm just literally not gonna do it. So this makes it super easy. And also they add in black pepper, which actually helps with the bioavailability of that curcumin. Why is it so hard to say? Curcumin. I'm still probably saying it wrong. So basically what I mean by bioavailability is that your body's actually gonna be able to use it versus just ingesting those compounds and having them, you're kind of just peeing them out. Your body's actually saying, okay, these are being ingested, now let me use them. And no, I don't really think you could taste peppery flavors. So like I said, I love to make this latte, and for this I just put some milk, put some of the powder in there, a little squeeze of honey because I like mine a little sweet, and then some ice. And you can do this with warm beverages too. You can mix it with warm water, you can put it in smoothies, you can put it into oatmeal. I mean, there's so many different ways to have this, but I think it's just so easy to sip on, and it tastes good. I really do like the taste of it. It really feels like I'm just kind of at a trendy coffee house and they're serving me this delicious and beautiful latte, but I'm at home and it's like way cheaper. You can also put it into sauces, soups, energy balls. I mean, so many different things. You can also get it in a capsule if you're more into that, don't really want to drink something or throw it in your food. That's definitely an option. And again, it's got the black pepper in there and avocado oil for kind of that superior bioavailability. Now, like I said, I use Further Food in my daily life. I use their collagen in my morning coffee. I use the vanilla, so delicious. We could do an entire other video on collagen. I know there's a lot of confusing research out there, so let me know in the comments if you want me to do any talking about that. My husband actually puts it in his coffee too because it literally tastes that good. It's like the perfect hint subtle of vanilla without being like too creamy. And it's a really great source of amino acids, which essentially are the building blocks of protein. And I do morning workouts, so I like having it before because that's going to give my body some amino acids for my muscles to kind of help start repairing. But again, we could go into so much more detail on that topic, so let me know if you want me to do that. Another reason that I love Further Food is because they are a really inspirational women-owned company. And that's something that's really important to me. And I can really stand behind their mission, which is really dedicated to combining the proven ancient healing practices of Eastern medicine with combined modern science to help us live longer, healthier lives. If you want to try either of their turmeric products and you want to make yourself a little latte like me, or you want to try their collagen, whatever you want to try, you can use the code NOFOODRULES for 10% off. And I also have a link that I'll put in the description. They also have ashwagandha, which I talked about in my menstrual cycle diet plan video. So if you were watching that and you're like, what the heck is that? You can find it there. But just like a recap of that, it helps with stress and can help improve perceived stress and biomarkers of stress. Okay, so the third thing that you can eat on your period is non-heme sources of iron. Now, these are plant-based iron sources. Let's be real, during our periods, we lose a lot of blood, right? A common cause of iron deficiency anemia is heavy bleeding during our menstrual cycle. Studies have found that iron deficiency anemia may impact a woman's physical performance, cognitive function, mood, and really the overall quality of life. Additional studies have shown that iron intake can help improve symptoms of PMS. Fabulous! So you can try incorporating some of those plant-based sources of iron into your diet while you're on your period. Some ways that you can do this are by eating beans, spinach, dark chocolate. Yes, girl, dark chocolate. Or you could do breads or cereals that are enriched with iron. Another thing you can eat is bananas. Go bananas, girlfriend. So bananas can help with the cramping and bloating, which, let's be real, are real common during our period. So this is due to the fact that they contain the vitamin B6 and also potassium. So make yourself some whole grain toast enriched with iron, slather some peanut butter on top, throw some bananas in there, and boom, you got yourself a very, very period-friendly snack. Speaking of peanut butter. Peanut butter is another food that can be helpful when you're on your period. So peanut butter contains vitamin B6 as well, but also magnesium. And these two together have been shown to decrease some of those PMS symptoms like moodiness and cramping. And magnesium can also help regulate serotonin, which, remember, is that feel-good hormone that tends to be lower during our periods. So this one, again, I would recommend eating during PMS, but also on your period. The fat in the peanut butter can also be really helpful for you because, remember, our estrogen during our periods start off low, and therefore so is our insulin sensitivity. And that fat in the peanut butter can be really helpful for you too, because since our estrogen is low when we start our periods, so is our insulin sensitivity. So the mono and polyunsaturated fats in the peanut butter can help to stabilize your blood sugar. You don't have to tell me a reason to eat peanut butter. I'm eating peanut butter all the time. Another thing to eat on your period, this one's actually to drink, chamomile. Grab yourself a cup of tea, girlfriend. Chamomile has been used to treat PMS because of the anti-inflammatory effects, the anti-spasmodic effects, and the anti-anxiety effects. Also, be sure to get some calcium and vitamin D when you're on your period. Higher intakes of vitamin D have been linked to lower symptoms of PMS. Specifically, you want to look for sources of calcium and vitamin D together. Calcium and vitamin D can also strengthen our bones. And like I said, in addition, not only to treating PMS, but preventing PMS from even happening. So bypass it, girlfriend. So speaking of that bone health, when we're on our periods, estrogen levels start off low, remember? And low estrogen can contribute to bone loss. That's why when we don't have our periods, like we lose it, then bone health is a really important thing to look into, because if you're not getting your period, you likely have low estrogen, and that can really impair the strength of our bones. Now, a drop in estrogen for a normal menstrual cycle is normal, but it's still important to make sure that you're giving your body that calcium and vitamin D to keep building those strong bones. Dairy products are a really great source of calcium and vitamin D together typically. I mean, heck, I got my turmeric in here, I've got my calcium and vitamin D in here, I'm good to go. Could also pair some salmon, which is high in vitamin D, with some spinach, which is going to have more of that calcium. Plus, we talked about earlier, remember how spinach is a really great source of that non-heme iron. Boom, you got yourself a period powerhouse. I have a really good recipe for spinach blueberry salad that you could just throw some salmon on top of. So good. I'll link to that in the description for you too. I put some cottage cheese on that salad too, so you get calcium and vitamin D again, some of that dairy. Don't knock the cottage cheese on a salad until you try it. All right, gorgeous humans, so those are 7 foods that you can eat on your period. Well, 7 things to eat on your period. Let me know in the comments which of these you are going to try out on your next period. And also remember, every person's body is different, so I want you to try these, and bottom line, you know your body, so listen to it. Huge shout out again to Further Food for sponsoring this video. I will link to them in the description and also the discount code where you can snag 10% off. And I will see you guys next Sunday with another video at 5 p.m. Eastern time. See you later.